Sean, it's so good to be here with you on Deep Cuts. We're mixing things up a little bit. We don't have Pastor Tony in the film room today, but it's us. No. And it's really a conversation that we would probably have around the cubicles anyway, but it's good to just put it on camera and dissect this awesome word that PT brought to the church yesterday. I thought it was a really enlightening word, so I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I love when PT preaches. He's one of the most well-prepared pastors and speakers you'll ever find.
Absolutely. Yeah, so he hit on these two proverbs that I've read probably 1,000 times, but it's so good to refresh on them. Specifically, Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Mm-hmm. Then he continued to Proverbs 9:10 that says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Yes.
This thread through both is the fear of the Lord. PT gave some good descriptions, but I'd just love to hear your thoughts. What is fear of the Lord in your mind?
Fear, in my mind, is having my tummy be upset and I get sweaty and I yawn a lot when I get nervous. I think because of maybe my blood pressure changing or something. So that's what happens when I'm really afraid.
Okay.
I don't know what happens when you're afraid.
Yeah, I tend to just scream and cry like a little girl or things like that. But
yeah, for sure. But that's not the fear of the Lord.
Right.
That's a fleshly kind of fear that we just jokingly described. But the fear of the Lord is a complex subject. Mm-hmm. Because when we hear the word fear God. Wait a minute, fear is bad, right? I don't want to fear God. I thought he was my father, my
right.
Abba.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of Abba.
Right.
It's sometimes I think you're afraid of your father, to be fair, But, I actually was thinking a lot about this one. And I remembered an example that I think you will love, Tyler.
I can't wait.
You've read the Chronicles of Narnia books.
Yeah, I have.
From one of the books, I believe it's from Silverchair, there's this really interesting story. The character Jill, she's so thirsty. She's dying of thirst. She comes across a stream. Mm. And on the other side of the stream is a lion. Mm-hmm. Aslan, the lion. And the lion sees her. She's freaked out. And he says, "Are you thirsty?" And she says, "Yes." And he says, "Then come and drink." And then she's so scared of the lion, she says, "But could you please go away while I drink?" And then it says the lion looks at her and she realized she might as well have asked the whole mountain to move because she could not possibly change his perspective or opinion. So she asks, "If I drink, will you promise not to eat me?" And he said, "I make no such promise." She says, "Do you eat little girls?" He says, "I have swallowed girls and boys, women and men, kings and emperors, cities and kingdoms." Oh, not super encouraging. So she says, "Then I will go find another stream." And he says, "There is no other stream." And she says, "Well, then I dare not drink." He says, "If you don't drink, you'll die of thirst." And I love that picture C.S. Lewis wrote because I kind of feel in many ways that's the Lord. He's a very good God, but boy, is he powerful. Beyond measure, beyond comprehension. It would be wise of you to have a very healthy, natural reverence and fear for who he is, because the same respect and authority, that same kind of seriousness you would apply to God, that's the same power that can respond to your problems in life.
100%. Yeah, it's an acknowledgement of his power. You know what's funny? I actually just happened to watch The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe the other night.
Of course you did.
And there is this line that Lucy, the youngest, actually says about Aslan. Says that he's a good lion, but he is a terrifying lion. He is a ferocious lion. And it's that dichotomy of he is all-powerful. Don't forget the power. But he is good.
That Pastor Dan says it actually all the time. It's funny. He quotes one of the lines from one of the books. "Remember, he is not a tame lion."
He's not a tame lion.
Our God is very, very powerful.
Yeah.
And I am actually encouraged by that. My sin, my flesh dreads it.
Right.
But my spirit, who trusts in the Lord, knows I can trust in him.
Correct.
Because he is a rock that will not be moved.
Yeah. And scriptures give us this beautiful picture of him as our refuge, him as our covering, him as the place of security. But the reason we can stand in that much faith is because when anything else looks at him, they see that power.
Yeah.
When the enemy looks at him, they see that power. And so I think that holy fear of the Lord, that reverent fear of the Lord, is aligning yourself to him.
Yeah, and it says
it's his way, not my way.
It says in James, you believe in God good, so do the demons, and they tremble.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's that calibration, that alignment to him. And PT actually told a really interesting story I thought helped tell the story a little bit of differentiating fear and fear, if you will. He told the story of a schoolyard bully.
Yeah.
That kind of gave him a little sucker punch in it, and it just put this anxiety in him that he dreaded going to school, would make up excuses not to go, and it was this avoidance, apprehension, this deep soul fear. I don't want to be near that.
Yeah.
And PT made it very clear that that is not the appropriate fear of the Lord, that it would cause apprehension or distance. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's that you are so big, but you are also so good. I need to be close to you.
Yeah.
This fear actually should draw you in.
For sure.
So how, in your experiences of fear of the Lord, how would you kind of describe that difference?
The difference between a fear of God and a fear of a bully.
Correct, yeah.
So we don't want to think God of a bully. One of the things I really like when PT preaches is PT's great about having a really good opening that I don't know where it's going yet.
Yeah.
Like, so he's starting off with this story about being young and being the coolest kid in class, basically, until a bully shows up. It's kind of like it's like a car with this enormous thing it's pulling behind it, and you're like, what's all this stuff? And then it hitches to the car.
Yeah.
And then now you see where the momentum, the force is taking it. And once you click into that, I'm like, okay, now I see what's going on here. So the thing that really clicked with me with that message was the idea that I don't want to go to school because the bully's going to be after me. And I know he's stronger than me, and I know he can hurt me. And I thought, well, the Lord's after me, though. But I don't fear him the same way.
Right.
Because I know he's after me to love me.
Yeah.
And to take care of me.
Yeah.
He's looking for me because he wants to be my father.
Yeah. It's that leaving the 99, pursuing the one kind of thought.
So one of the things I kind of was encouraged by was the thought that even if the Lord is after me, I know that his plans are good. Actually, in his presence is the best place to be.
100%.
And so I kind of thought about Moses, when he encountered the Lord, there's times where it keeps referencing this phenomenon of light. So he was met the Lord on a mountain, and it was fire. And he then was there, and God passed by him, and he covered his face. He says, you can't even look. And then when he was in the presence of God in a tent, he had to wear a veil over his face because his face was shining.
Yeah.
And there's kind of this interesting, I just love talking about space so much. I don't know why. But I kind of got this picture of the sun. Like, the sun is something that I am aware of every day, but I can't stare at it.
Right.
And how much more so can I not really gaze upon God? Even creation, I cannot possibly look at it. So the thing I thought was interesting, though, is I cannot survive. My life is the sunlight. I mean, the sunlight is providing the energy that the world needs to move for us to live. And God is even greater than that. But I have to respect that sunlight because some of us with, bald heads, you get a sunburn on your head once and you're never going to let it happen again.
You're very aware of the
There's
power
no
of the
strike
sun.
two.
Yeah.
So I realized, okay, I understand that giant ball of exploding gas in the sky has power in my life. The Lord, even if I'm not seeing him, his power is so much greater in my life. But the sun just chills there. It just does its thing. It's its nature. But God's nature is not only that holiness, but it's a holiness that's looking for me in a good way.
Yeah.
It's a holiness that wants to find me.
It's relational.
So, to be my father.
Correct. I mean, I think that's the gospel wrapped up in a nutshell, in that his holiness is so perfect and pure, but his desire for relationship was still so strong that he created a way for our lack of holiness to be atoned for. That way, then we can be seen in the same righteousness as Jesus by his sacrifice on the cross. And then that creates that relationship accessibility. But it doesn't take away at all from the holiness, the perfection, the purity, and the power that is God.
Yes.
That goes uncompromised.
Yes.
But what he did is make a way that we can then be in relationship to, which is vital to God's nature, is that relational part of him. I think that's so good. You mentioned something about I could never fully comprehend the Son or creation. Like I can't fully just gaze upon God and understand it. I think that is a really important thing. PT made mention about knowing God or having a proper understanding of him. And it feels like a huge undertaking as a believer to have a proper understanding. And I think in that way, it doesn't mean a perfectly whole, I know every element of God, but that the trajectory in which we look at God is still is correct. How would you advise maybe a new believer to start that process of understanding God properly?
So there's this the kind of problem of knowledge versus wisdom. Mm-hmm. You can know something, and PT mentioned that. Like you could know so much, but that's not necessarily wisdom. I actually heard a story that I feel like actually made me realize the answer to that question. There's a thought experiment. There's two men who are applying for a job. One man goes in and he does a great interview, but he overhears from the person conducting the interview, let's say it's Sean and Tyler. So Sean goes into this interview and he overhears that, Tyler is going to get the job. And I know that you have 10 coins in your pocket because I saw you put them in before I went to the interview. So I'm like, okay, well, the guy who's going to win the job has 10 coins in his pocket. Then you go in the interview and then you come out. And then you say to me, Sean, you got the job. And then I check my pocket, and I totally forgot I had 10 coins in my pocket. So what I said was, the one who wins this job will have 10 coins. Now, this is a philosophical topic because it's about you knew the truth. You knew something that was true. It was justifiable what you knew. It was based off true knowledge, but you had the wrong reasons for knowing it. And the reason this is interesting is because Abraham in the Bible, Abraham was supposed to give his son to the Lord as a sacrifice. He's going up the mountain and he says, we're going to make this sacrifice. His son asks him, where's the animal to be sacrificed? And he said, the Lord will provide the lamb. Yeah. But here's the thing. Abraham, it says in Hebrews, Abraham was going up there believing, even if I do sacrifice my son, God will raise him from the dead.
Right.
So he knew, no matter what's happening, God will take care of it. But he said to his son, God will provide the lamb. But what happens is he goes up there, he's stopped by the angel, and it says they found a ram in the thicket. Now, what's really powerful about this, and Christians get all excited, is because the lamb is the sacrifice, not the ram, because it's the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. But one of the things I find interesting is it's kind of similar to the interview problem. Abraham knew the truth. He had knowledge, but he kind of came to it with the wrong reasoning. And the reason I think this is interesting is because even if I had infinite knowledge, that is not the same as having trust in God.
Right.
I believe every Christian needs to start there.
Yeah. So good.
If you got saved yesterday, I can't possibly expect you to know the Word of God and what it means to be a Christian.
All the nuances.
What it's this practice
systematic
of
theology. And
trusting God is the first most essential step. It's the beginning and the end. That fear of the Lord, that is the beginning, that is the end of wisdom.
Yeah.
Trust him because he is so much more powerful than anything you can understand right now.
Yeah.
You might understand more over time. You might know more, learn more, but you will always have to trust in God.
That's so good. Because I feel like that knowing God, it's not so much an accumulation of knowledge. PT talked about that, the knowledge, like we could gain information. AI could be as powerful as we could ever, but it will never truly know God because knowing God is more of a trajectory towards the infinite. It's the trajectory towards him. And it's really in this humble posture of trust and acknowledgement that, you know what, God, as much as I will learn, study, read, and digest, getting revelation through prayer and through scripture reading, no matter how much I acquire in this life, it pales in comparison to who you are. Therefore, my heart, my soul, my spirit will yield to you. And I think that's where this fear of the Lord, it brings in the conversation about lordship, surrender, humility, all of these important Christian qualities that I think they may not get worked on very well if there isn't that holy fear of the Lord. He used the phrase, it's a launching pad. It's the starting point of everything, is the knowing the fear of the Lord. Yeah. And I think it does take, it's not even just acquired knowledge that even gets you to that. I do think it is a yielding of self. I think that starts the process. Like you said, it's this trust in God entirely. I want to wrap up. PT made 3 distinct points on this, and I'm curious, in every sermon, there's multiple points made, but there's some that really stand out for whatever reason to each person. The 3 he made was, number 1, the fear of the Lord reminds us we belong to him. Number 2, the fear of the Lord creates a path to knowing him. And number 3, the fear of the Lord teaches us we can be like him. Which of these 3 would you say stood out to you, and why did that point hit so hard?
It's definitely the third one. The fear of the Lord teaches us we can be like him. Because every time I fail, every time I'm weak, every time I mess up, I naturally just think so lowly of myself. And I think we all do that, but I really am encouraged by the picture that the Lord's not treating me like an animal. Like I'm not being a dog. I'm not a dog that's being trained to do tricks.
Right.
I am one of his children who he is trying to shape into the image of his son, Jesus. He has a plan for me that is amazing and profound. It extends even beyond my natural life on this earth.
Right.
And I'm really encouraged by the belief and the understanding that he started working on me, and he's going to finish what he started. Yep. Even if I, mess it up a lot along the way, and I kind of, maybe make his job harder. Yeah. He's going to do what he set out to do in me.
And I think that's that beautiful counterbalance to the holy fear of the Lord is then the revelation of his grace. That his grace is sufficient for us. He meets us in every area of weakness, that as we're being made more and more like him, that sanctification process is happening.
Loving, good, gracious Father.
Yeah, he reaches into our life, picks us up when we fall, brushes off the dust when we, kind of fell in the ditch, he just keeps us going towards him.
You're the prodigal son who smells like pig, and then you come home and you're filthy, and next thing you know, you're dressed up with all these fancy clothes, and it's not in the parable, but I almost can imagine this fun little thing of like one of the servants says to the son, like, "Oh, you look like your dad."
Oh, I love that. Yeah,
it's true.
This is when I know
because he made me look that way.
You got to write that movie. It's in you. The fact that you just landed on that.
If any producers are watching,
all right, we'll
me.
do it. Love it. Well, Sean, thank you so much for this conversation today. It's good to deep dive a little bit into PT's word. It's always good to get PT up on the platform and hearing him teach. I'm looking forward to it. We wrap up the sermon series next week.
Hooray.
I get to do that. I'm pretty pumped about that.
Hooray.
Wrapping up the sermon series on Ways of the Wise, and then it's into the end of the month.
Save the best for last.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm up.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to it, buddy.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right, now, let's talk more about Chronicles of Narnia.